It was a crisp Saturday morning in downtown Silverwood. The gentle murmur of the city blended with the warm aroma of roasted coffee beans wafting from a snug little cafe called the Daily Brew. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, casting golden streaks across the cream-colored walls and polished wooden tables. In a quiet corner by the window, Evan Miles, a 36-year-old single father with weary eyes but a steady, calm presence, stirred sugar into his coffee. His 8-year-old daughter, Hannah, was perched beside him, doodling on a napkin. Evan wore a worn denim jacket, its faded fabric telling stories of long days at the construction site. His hands were calloused, a testament to years of hard work. His life was simple and honest: wake early, work hard, care for his daughter, and hope tomorrow might bring a little more ease. But that morning, life had a surprise in store. At a nearby table sat Isla Sterling, a woman in her early 30s with piercing green eyes and a sleek cream coat. There was a quiet elegance about her, the sort that made people glance twice without knowing why. To the cafe's patrons, she was just another attractive woman sipping coffee and scrolling on her phone. Yet beneath her composed exterior, she was a name recognized in business circles worldwide: Isla Sterling, billionaire CEO of Sterling Group, one of the country's largest real estate empires. Today, though, she sought only to vanish for a moment of ordinary life, away from cameras and unending expectations. Little did she know, this ordinary morning would alter everything. Before we continue, if you cherish stories of kindness, second chances, and proof that good people still exist, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Your support helps us continue to share heartwarming stories every day. As Evan helped Hannah pack up her crayons, two young men entered the cafe, laughing loudly before they even reached the counter. Isla, who had just stood to refill her cup, found herself directly in their path. One of them, tall with messy hair and an expensive jacket, jostled her shoulder so sharply that her coffee tipped and spilled onto the floor. "Watch where you're going," he sneered, though the blame was clearly his. Isla tried to ignore it. She'd long been criticized for seeming distant or unapproachable. But humiliation burned through her veins as the coffee soaked her sleeve, the men's laughter cutting cruelly. The barista froze. The cafe went quiet. Everyone, that is, except Evan. Rising from his seat, he gently nudged Hannah's chair back and approached. "Hey," he said, voice steady and firm, the kind that commands attention without raising it. "Apologize to her." The tall man scoffed. "Who are you?" "Just someone who knows how to respect others," Evan replied evenly, his calm demeanor carrying a quiet strength that drew the gaze of every table. The man laughed, but Evan stepped closer, his height, posture, and protective fire in his eyes cracking the bully's confidence. Muttering under his breath, he left, his friend trailing behind. Silence lingered before a small round of applause rippled through the cafe. Isla blinked, not at the confrontation itself, but at the stranger's simple, genuine act. He didn't know who she was, nor did he care about her wealth, status, or image. He had acted from decency, a rarity she rarely witnessed. "Thank you," she said softly, brushing the coffee from her coat. Evan handed her a napkin. "No one deserves that. You okay?" She nodded. "I am now." They chatted briefly about small things, the weather, her ruined coat, and even Hannah's doodle that somehow ended up in Isla's hands. When Hannah shyly smiled at her, Isla felt an unexpected warmth. There was something about this father and daughter, their bond, and quiet resilience that drew her in. Later, back in her penthouse, overlooking the skyline, Isla couldn't stop replaying the encounter. Her world of marble and glass was cold and empty, yet the memory of that humble man and his little girl stirred a longing for simplicity and warmth she hadn't felt in years. She instructed her assistant to find out who he was, not to intrude, but because she sensed their meeting was meant to be. Days went by. Evan returned to his routine, waking before dawn, packing Hannah's lunch, walking her to school, and working long hours at a construction site near the edge of town. The pay barely covered rent and groceries, but he never complained. 3 years earlier, his wife had died in a car accident, leaving him to raise Hannah alone. Every night, he tucked her in with stories about hope and the promise of a better tomorrow, even as he quietly battled bills, fatigue, and the ache of loneliness. One Friday afternoon, A sleek black car pulled up outside the site. Workers turned to stare as Isla Sterling stepped out in a tailored navy dress and sunglasses. Evan, hauling cement bags, was called over by his supervisor. Confused, he wiped his hands on his jeans and approached her. "Evan, right? We met at the coffee shop." He nodded, unsure. "I came to thank you properly," she said. "And to offer you something." She explained that her company had launched a community rebuilding initiative, providing secure, well-paid jobs in affordable housing construction. She wanted Evan to join as a site supervisor, with better pay, benefits, and flexible hours to spend time with his daughter. Evan blinked. That's more than I ever hoped for. But why me? Because you stood up for someone when you didn't have to, Isla replied softly. The world needs more people like you, standing strong, not just surviving. He accepted, hesitant but grateful. In the following weeks, life shifted. His new job brought security, dignity, and hope. He could finally afford Hannah's art classes. Their small apartment began to fill with laughter once more. And Isla kept visiting, always finding excuses to check in, sometimes bringing coffee or muffins, often just to talk to Evan. They shared stories of loss, resilience, and the quiet beauty of ordinary days. Isla spoke of her mother, who raised her alone after her father's death, teaching her that wealth is meaningless without kindness. Evan shared how each scar on his hands reminded him of his fight for a future for his daughter. Their bond grew slowly but deeply, founded on respect, empathy, and the rare comfort of being understood. Months later, on a bright spring morning, Isla invited Evan and Hannah to an open field where Sterling Group was unveiling a new project, Free Homes for Struggling Single Parents. Before the crowd, she delivered a heartfelt speech about compassion and community. Then, turning to Evan and Hannah, she said, "This project began with a man who reminded me that kindness doesn't come from wealth or power. It comes from courage, from standing up for someone, even when no one is watching." Evan's eyes glistened as applause filled the air. Hannah hugged him tightly. "That's you, Daddy." After the ceremony, Isla approached quietly. "You changed more than my morning that day," she said softly. "You reminded me who I want to be." He smiled warmly. "And you gave me a chance to start again." In that moment, sunlight between them, the crowd blurred into the background. Two lives from separate worlds had found shared rhythm not through money or fame, but through kindness and gratitude. From that day, Isla and Evan's friendship deepened. She visited often, not as a CEO, but as someone who cared. She joined Hannah's art shows, shared dinners, laughed over burnt pancakes in their modest kitchen. Slowly, love blossomed, natural, genuine, unhurried. Not a fairy tale, but real. Built on scars, second chances, and the beauty of ordinary hearts meeting. One quiet evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Isla looked across the dinner table and said, "You didn't know who I was when you defended me. You just saw someone who needed help. That's why I fell for you." She reached for his hand. "I didn't need to know your name to know you were worth standing up for," Evan replied. Sometimes love doesn't announce itself with grand gestures. It enters quietly, through the door of kindness. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Let's show the world that kindness matters and that one small act of courage can change someone's life forever.